So I was asked this morning if I could make a little pouch for hand sanitizer. Now, initially I thought, I can use Diane Spencer-Ogg's little pattern that she's come out with. However, my customer wanted it upside down, so that way, and in faux leather to match her handbag. So I had to come up with another idea. So this is what I would call probably the quickest pattern in history. This is 4 pieces and a swivel clip. Now I've got a 3/4 inch swivel clip. You could do it with a 1/2 inch one, probably even do it with a 1 inch one. I'm going to do a video. I'll give you the pattern pieces. There'll be no instructions, no written instructions. Do with it what you want. It's free, but I'll show you how I did it. So with my front piece, which is the piece that's got that little arch in the bottom, I lay my strap across approximately 1 inch from the top straight edge. So just use my ruler to get that in place, and I'm just going to clip one side while I stitch the other, and I'm stitching at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that's one end. It'll probably take me longer to actually draft the pattern pieces for this than it does to sew. So let's get rid of my threads, because we all know how much I love threads. So there we go. That's my strap holder. Let's call it a flap holder. I'm not giving it a fancy name. So at the bottom here, we've got these 2 little cutouts, and what we're going to do is effectively is a boxed corner. However, we're not going to stitch right the way across. We are only going to stitch from 1/4 of an inch. So if you want to mark 1/4 of an inch, mark it now, and we're going to stitch this at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So tight. So again, let's just start at 1/4 of an inch from the edge, couple of back stitches. Get rid of my threads. Done. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the other corner. Get rid of my threads. So that's my front piece done. You can turn your little corners out and poke them out if you want to. And that's the front completed. On the back, now this is the flap, this bit here. So on the wrong side of your fabric, approximately 1/2 an inch down from the from these cutouts, a line across. Then fold your fabric in half and just finger press it. That should give you the center. So I've now marked the center. And because my hardware is 3/4 of an inch, I know that I need a 3/4 of an inch cut made in this. So I'm going to cut 3/8 of an inch either side of that center mark. And I'm just using my ruler and a craft knife. And I've made I can show you, I've made a little cut in there. Take a piece of hardware, put your strap connector through so that it's right way, so it's wrong sides together, and pop that through the hole you've just made. Now if you've only got 1/2 inch hardware, 1/2 inch hardware is fine. If you've got inch hardware, you could even use that. It really doesn't matter. You obviously have to make the hole bigger according to the size of the hardware that you're using. So I've popped it through, and I'm just going to stitch now below that cut. So making sure that that stays nice and straight, I'm just going to do a line of stitching approximately 1/8 of an inch below the cut, and I'm back stitching 1 stitch at the beginning and 1 stitch at the end. Normally I wouldn't do that. Normally I would bury my threads, but this isn't lined, so there really isn't anywhere to hide your threads. And it's not like it's going to be carrying a lot of weight, so it's not going to rip under weight. Now I'm going to do a second line of stitching 1/4 of an inch below that, just to be secure, to make sure it doesn't come off. So there we have our lines of stitching, and on the inside I'm just going to trim off the excess because we don't want too much sitting on the inside. And there we have our nicely positioned, whatever you want to call it, strap connector. If you want to do a third line, you can do. I like to do sometimes, and it's really very much up to you. I'm doing this third line above the cup, which will secure any holes on the inside, but it really is very much your call. It's a little spider. Oh, go on, little spider, away you go. So that's the back completed, and this is the front. So we are now going to join these two pieces together. So we're laying the back right sides down, and we're taking these bottom pieces, so the pieces that are each side of this arch, and I'm going to match that bottom corner on there with the bottom corner on the pattern, on the back piece. So you can see this, it's kind of created, almost as I've clipped it, it's kind of created a little cutout there already, but I'm just going to clip that on so that the two corners match, and then I'm going to stitch across there at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Couple of back stitches all the way across at 1/4 inch, and then exactly the same on the other side. Make sure you don't catch the side of your front panel, you just want the bottom of the front panel to go on. Just going to pop a clip in. I'm not talking anything fancy schmancy here, we're just talking about something simple, usable and practical. Right, poke out your corners on your front piece, and you should be able to line up the sides. And we'll need a couple of clips here just to make sure it stays in place. Let's grab another clip. And it should line up perfectly with this top edge. If it doesn't, you can always just, if it's a smidge, you can trim a little bit off if you need to. And again, I'm going to stitch down this side at 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going over my strap that I put on earlier on. Flatten out your boxed corner just so that you don't stitch over that. So, and then I'm going to pull the other one into place exactly the same way, so matching the tops and the bottom, and again stitching at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Oh, the thread's jumped off. How bizarre. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, and I like to curve that bottom bit where there's if you want to use a rotary cutter to do that, that's all fine. I don't feel the need to. And then all we've got is a cool little holder for your still got some threads on there which I need to get rid of. Cool little holder for your hand sanitizer. So she's raw edges. If you want to paint the edges or anything like that, you can do. There's enough room to be able to wiggle it about in there, and you can put you could put a chapstick or a, you know, anything like that in there if you wanted to with it. I've got 2 or 3 bottles of sanitizer, and they're all a slightly different shape, so I wanted to make it big enough to accommodate all. You can see there's actually plenty of room in there. If you wanted to make it slightly smaller, you could narrow it down a little bit. That's up to you. This is the size that I felt was practical to accommodate all of them. And some of them are, if you've got a bigger bottle in a smaller pod, in a smaller little pouch, you find that you can't get it in and out. You can make the flap longer if you want to. You can change the shape of the flap. It's up to you. Do what you want. It's really very much your call. It is just a simple little pouch just to put your sanitizer in. There we go. So I'll get the pattern pieces drawn up and it's all yours.